COVID-19, precarity, and informational asymmetry. Hello, my name is Clarissa Lee, and I will be speaking on the first phase of our project on COVID-19, vulnerable population and well-being by focusing on precarity and informational asymmetry. This concerns how informational technology, data trends, and public policies shape discourses that are harmful to the well-being of vulnerable communities. The biggest personal challenge I face involves getting everyone to come together to see how their expertise align. Then, there are challenges of working in the new normal. Presently, the focus is on gathering as much secondary data as we can for modeling examples of informational asymmetry in preparation for when we could collect primary data. Humanistic consideration of the issue in the Malaysian context is fairly underappreciated. For the most part, humanistic intervention into any issues outside of the academic life is fairly minimal. This itself has to do with the marginal position of the humanities in Malaysia and the fact that the humanities are seldom considered as having a relevant role in public policy making. While the humanities have developed into intervention methods for bringing together engagement across disciplinary fields, structures of higher education, research grants, and the overall cultural research in Malaysia makes this a particular challenge. Now I will present to you the data we have collected and synthesized on informational asymmetry and the migrant community. The COVID-19 pandemic affords a new normal in physical distancing that made us increasingly dependent on digital platforms to fulfill our day-to-day needs, be those needs physical, mental, emotional, or spiritual. The circulation of information through digital platforms create a new set of inequalities as well as violence. In this research, our group is interested in understanding how informational and epistemic injustices could be enacted through how misinformation, disinformation, and malinformation circulate. In considering vulnerable communities, one may ask as to how information in the form of rumors may cause harm. In this specific presentation, we will present the first phase of our ongoing project, which involves the mapping of media resources and discourses that either directly discusses or skirts around the issue of informational asymmetry and its effects upon vulnerable communities. Informational asymmetry is not just about the hows and whats of information that goes out to particular targets and the potential misinformation that are circulating, but also how targets are subjects of informational disinformation and malinformation. You can see here how information could empower the vulnerable by providing them with knowledge, such as making that knowledge available in a language accessible to that community, yet be used to demonize them by sowing seeds of hate through selective propagation of information about the community. Although vulnerable populations stem a spectrum of communities, we draw on the abundance of primary sources of migrant workers, documented or otherwise, to kickstart our investigation. From the timeline, one could witness how data and information circulating around the bodies of the migrant workers could be used to expose in asymmetrical ways the effects that could be as much sustaining as harmful. Malaysia has had a long-term issue with migrant workers' mistreatment. It has had a long history that began in the colonial era when the British began importing Chinese and Indian workers into what was then Malaya. Many of these workers were subject to unhygienic and difficult living conditions, none too different from the ones faced by more recent groups of migrant workers. Although Malaysia has used migrant domestic workers, restaurant workers, and construction workers for decades, mainly from Indonesia and the Philippines, over the past decade, the state has seen a shift in demographics of its workers, who are increasingly arriving from the other parts of Southeast Asia and South Asia. There are many problems of governance, corruption, and inefficiencies in discussing labor in Malaysia. Suffice to say, it is one of the most highly politicized issues due to the economic contraction and rising rates of unemployment among its citizens. Moreover, the pandemic revealed many of the abuses of the migrant workers' systems at around the same time that the state is trying to control how its image is being projected in the international stage. Other than the undocumented migrant workers, Malaysia also faces the problem of undocumented migrant workers that are usually due to the unscrupulous practices of the agents who brought in these workers, as well as refugees who had to work even when they do not have a permit. This came to head when contact tracing was attempted to include non-citizen communities and glaring gaps became obvious. Distrust and xenophobia also led to the creation of rumors and fake news around the migrant communities, further exacerbated by statements made by various political figures. In other words, migrant workers are needed, but treated as if they are disposable. Drags on, things worsen for the most vulnerable. While there are improvements to contact testing strategies, implementation and enforcement remain a challenge since not every member of the public treats the situation with gravity. Here are some questions that we have for the audience. What other ways are there to envision informational asymmetry in relation to vulnerable members of the public? What historical examples would best exemplify the case just presented here? If any of you watching these are working on the interconnection between misinformation, the role of science communication, and public participation in rapid response policymaking, please get in touch with me. Thank you for your attention.